Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. We've almost been programmed to say 13 points clear, haven't we? And that was probably what we expected when the weekend started. However, that gap only widens, and it might even be more than a hand than we have on the title right now. But here to talk about the Southampton game, PSG coming, all the off-field news and on-field news ever is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. I mean, let's be honest, at Anfield, the first half wasn't, but the weather was glorious on Saturday, wasn't it, David?
Yeah, really nice. And I kind of thought actually on the way into the ground that because Slot had said, hadn't he, we need to make it really hostile. It's the first of 3 cup finals. And I just thought, it's kind of end of season weather here against bottom of the league. I don't really think he's probably going to get that, to be honest. That was the nice part. But then, of course, the first half wasn't particularly enjoyable from a Liverpool perspective after that. So I imagine Slot was pretty angry because he wasn't getting what he wanted on the pitch and he wasn't getting it off it either.
Yeah, there was a lot to talk about with Arne Slot and his part in Saturday's victory as well. No two ways about it. I mean, almost fast forward into the end a little bit here, but you've always said you felt it was pretty much done. I mean, it does feel now like a 15-point gap. There's more than a hand on that league title now, isn't there?
Yeah, I think we've been saying, haven't we, since it kind of went to around 9-10 points or whatever, that it was done because, it's just the pure, the maths of the situation, really. I think people always underrate what the opposition have to do, what kind of points per game they would have to go to overturn, say, a 9 point gap, something like that, versus what you would have to do. And then obviously when it gets to like 15, even with a game in hand and all the problems Arsenal have got and all the upsides of Liverpool, which is that they've lost just one game, it's absolutely done. I don't think anybody should be worried. And now it's just a case of how quickly can Liverpool win it, and at what game will they, get their hands on the title. So, and how many guards of honor will they get actually as well? So it's strange really, because you think the first time they won the Premier League title, although I don't like making that distinction, but you know what I kind of mean.
Yeah.
They did it at such a canter, and then they've had this second one here, and it's turned out it won't be quite as big a gap, but very, very similar in terms of getting it won early. So it's quite nice, and not a lot of clubs to get to enjoy the run in where you've basically got the league title wrapped up. So I guess everyone should really enjoy these next few games, and let's see when they actually do clinch it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what everyone's starting to think. When is it going to happen? So planning ahead, but let's just enjoy every minute, as you say. And I suppose jumping back literally to Saturday and the 3-1 victory. I mean, it is a cliche, but that game is literally a tale of 2 halves, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really, really poor in the first half. I mean, even at 0-0, which you would have said, okay, you can get in at 0-0 at half time. You've had chances. That's absolutely fine. That can happen in some of these games, but you just could see it wasn't quite right. There was no kind of zip to the play. It was very, very easy for Southampton. There was probably the best opportunity Liverpool had in that half was after 5 minutes through Curtis Jones. And then after that, really, it was kind of, they weren't banging down the door by any means. And as I say, Southampton, who are potentially on track to be the worst Premier League team of all time, kind of looked comfortable. And then not only that, had a few moments on the break where they made Liverpool look a little bit uncomfortable as well. And then obviously when the goal comes, that is, just a terrible, terrible goal to concede. And it just summed up the performance in general, really. And I'm very, very reluctant, and I tweeted this on the day, that very, very reluctant to use the complacency shout, because I think, a lot of the times, if the result's not going the right way and it's against a lesser light in the league, everyone will say they're being complacent, even if the performance has been great, but you've been a bit unlucky, or the opposition are just playing really well to kind of keep you out. The old people say complacency, I think, a bit too often, because professional footballers are very, very good at not being complacent and being on it, great mentality, and that's why they reach the elite levels. But that said, I think it's one of the rare occasions, really, where I would have said Liverpool were being complacent. And I think the goal kind of summed it up, really. I mean, Van Dijk in that situation, say that arises on Tuesday against PSG, he will be putting his foot through the ball. and getting it as far up the pitch as possible. That he was trying to be kind of clever and shield it back was just, well, this is Southampton, that they're not very good. We can play a little bit more, and he took that risk, and then complete mix up, and the goal taken really well by Will Smallbone. But as I say, it kind of summed up for me Liverpool's attitude in the first half, and I think that is, I think that's exactly how the manager saw it as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, he had quite a lot to say after the game, despite not actually being on the touchline, which you can understand. So, do want to talk about Arne Slot and two things in particular. But just before we do that, I think it's just worth listening to a short clip from what he said straight after the game.
It wasn't like you to make 3 changes at halftime. Was that what you thought was necessary?
Yeah, it was the first time. Maybe that had to do with me sitting so high up that you don't. Then when you look at it from there, you always feel like, it's a slow game. Where if you're at the line, it's a bit more. You see them running a bit more. But it felt to me that something should happen. I tried to warn them before the game. Tried to warn them yesterday already. It didn't work out, probably, as you can see the first half. So the only thing I could come up with is, apart from the quality these players brought in, is something had to happen. And it did, because in the second half, there was different energy with the team. There was different energy by the fans as well, but that mostly goes together. And as a result of that, 15 minutes later, we were 2-1 up.
Yeah, there's quite a bit to unpack there. The bit I wanted to ask you about, David, is because I've seen people jump on the atmosphere in the first half, and I was at the game, you're in the ground as well. As he said, that Liverpool is at Anfield as a reactionary stadium, and it goes hand in hand. So, as Arne Slot says, if the team are lethargic and playing it that slow, usually fans will follow suit, won't they, a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, I don't think supporters should be criticised for that, because I think, it's always kind of been that way at Anfield, that the two work together and create something magical. It's never just been, okay, we'll turn up and we'll drone on for 90 minutes in the background, making a big noise, and it's going to have nothing to do with what's going on the pitch. The players have to give them something, and they give something back, and then it reaches that crescendo, as you well know. And we've seen it many times this season, never mind down the years. This is just how Anfield works, and I think that's the best thing about it, because it can reach heights that no other ground can, because it has to be that perfect kind of synergy. And so, I don't think Arne Slot was disappointed by that. I think he knows how it works, and it is a little bit different to the continental grounds. But obviously, the highs are higher for me off the back of that, really. And the moment that Liverpool showed a little bit more on the pitch, and that first 10 minutes of the second half before the goal, they didn't need a goal. They just needed some energy and something to attach themselves to, and that is what kind of built it up. And then again, they worked together, and that's how the atmosphere improved and the performance improved. And but they need a little bit of something from on the pitch, and that's what they got a lot more of in the second half. And I think actually it's interesting there what he says about he just needed to change something, needs to get something going. I think that aligns really with the idea that it was just attitude, because you look at his subs as well, and he takes off Curtis Jones, who played half an hour in Paris. That's not fatigue. He takes off Kostas Tsimikas, who didn't get a minute in Paris. No. That's not fatigue. It's all about attitude and the energy that the players bring to the pitch. And he wanted to mix it up to completely change things. And he got that change when he made those switches in the second half. And Liverpool's energy was much, much better. So he didn't, it wasn't even fatigue. It was an attitude. And as I say, goes back to a little bit of complacency. And I don't want to be too harsh on the players for that, by the way, because it's natural. This is the easiest of the 3 fixtures that we were in. They may be, you just subconsciously feel you can take your foot off the gas a little bit, and that those things can happen. But of course, you occasionally need a reminder that if you ever do that, then this is the Premier League, and this might be the worst Premier League team of all time potentially, but they're still good enough to give you a shock at home, and so they did going into half time. So I think the manager was right to make those changes, because the players just needed that kind of kick up the backside. And once he did that, the performance improved, the atmosphere improved, they worked together, and Southampton couldn't deal with it. And Liverpool did that thing, which they always do when the atmosphere's up and they are playing well. They scored 2 goals in 2 minutes and completely changed the game.
It is something that it can just change like that. And I don't know if it's been missed, shall we say, on Saturday, but Arne Slot has to take a lot of the credit, because we've even seen from that first day, that first half against Ipswich on the opening day, if Jarell Quansah wasn't on it, bang, he comes off, Konate straight on. And it almost felt like a little bit like that. It's like he pulled no punches. You could hear some of the players talk afterwards that's the most animated they've ever seen him in that regard. Is that also his greatest strength that we've seen this season, that second half, he can almost analyse what's happened the first 45, change it, make tweaks, and that's what makes him an elite coach?
Yeah, exactly that, really. I mean, that's proven to be kind of a little bit of a speciality so far this season, hasn't it? That's something we're learning about Arne Slot, is that he is an absolute expert in making in-game changes that make Liverpool better. I mean, they still got hammered in PSG, didn't they, in midweek? But the reason they win that game is because of his in-game changes. You know, that gives Liverpool that tiny bit of a foothold. I mean, it's still 27 shots to 2. They still get hammered on expected goals. But the fact is they either lose or draw that game if he is not as good as he is at making changes. Even in games where Liverpool are getting battered, he can still have an influence on things. And so he did it against PSG. We spoke about Curtis Jones, the influence he had, Wataru Endo, what Harvey Elliott did, Darwin Nunez, of course. So he managed to do it in that game. And then again, against Southampton, his changes all changed the energy of the game, change how Liverpool play, and managed to help them win the game. And so he's just clearly very, very good at that aspect. I think one thing he would like to be slightly better at next season is not needing to be as good at in-game changes, for Liverpool to be slightly more dominant from the off in more games. But I do think, by the way, I've had a couple of comments on YouTube kind of asking, the first half problem, that this is a big issue for us. I actually don't think it has been recently. I think Liverpool have kind of shaken that off a little bit, but this was kind of a return to it. But I think it was maybe more to do with mentality than maybe tactics. But still, he's very good at making the changes that change the mentality, and the absolutely all those switches that he made at halftime worked, and that is a big strength of his, and huge credit to him, and something Liverpool are going to need to maybe lean on in the next few seasons while he's there.
Yeah, even a few games and ties to come up in Europe this campaign, it'll be needed. And you did mention a player there, Darwin Nunez. I mean, in almost 190 minutes, or less than 90 minutes, because I know he comes off for Diogo Jota just over the hour, did we see almost the entire range of just how bad Darwin Nunez can be, but just what he can also do at the top of his game as well?
Yeah, to be fair, I thought that first half, I didn't think he was like hugely poor or anything like that. I mean, he's the only one who's kind of seeming to get shooting opportunities. And I know he has a wild effort that goes over, but it's a really tricky chance, that one. And, he gets that left footer off where he gets space, he turns and he gets a shot in. And obviously that's a tough chance, but he's making the chance and he's there. I just thought his big problem was kind of getting a little bit of service. And I think the manager kind of recognised that by keeping him on for the second half. And then, he did that. And Nunez has the big moments in the second half where he changes it. And I mean, he's in a little vein of confidence now, isn't he? He makes that impact against PSG, completely changes the game there. He is, of all the subs at PSG, he is the absolute key one that changes things. Yeah. And then, of course, gets his start here, gets a goal, wins a penalty. So he must be feeling pretty good about himself. And you've got to think, it's such a big decision that coming into the PSG game. I'm very, very interested to see what happens there, because I just think Darwin Nunez has surely put himself in contention with his performances over this course of the last week, and the fact he's very, very suited to playing against this style and that kind of man-to-man. He just causes that chaos with his physicality and his pace. So really, really interesting. But it was good to see him, stay on, get that show of faith, and then reward it with great goal. Because I love to see him in the width of the inside the width of the post. Really easy finish for him there. And then, of course, as I say, wins the penalty because they're panicking about what he might do next. So great to see him in that moment. And continually, I'll say this for the rest of the season. His job is, before he goes, which is what we all expect, is to be as important as he can to his Liverpool team, whether that's coming off the bench, starting the odd game. And he's doing it. He really is doing it at the moment. And a huge credit to him, because it's be so easy to just, kind of clock out. And it's not been his season, maybe largely. And, just think it's not working out. I can't wait to get away. But he's playing an important role here in Liverpool winning the Premier League, and hopefully can play an important role in them winning the Champions League as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Still a big part to play. And As Red Armchair supporters saying there, 15 points clear. It still seems almost crazy to say that, but it is a good thing to say. No two ways about it. And I know you mentioned the other players that have come on. We talked about Mac a little bit and Harvey Elliott. Did just want to play a small clip from the weekend and what Arne Slot mentioned around the substitutes specifically.
Second of all, of course, I also knew that Robbo always creates something with his energy, with his mentality, not only in the team, but also with the fans. And yeah, there's a reason why Maka is a World Cup winner, because he always shows up when you need him in terms of mentality. And that's also definitely what he brought in the second half.
A bit like PSG, it is right to talk about the subs and the impact they had. And whilst not dismissing Robbo, I think he did help second half as well. Did it feel for you like McAllister was just the one, because he has that almost football IQ in the midfield, as good as the others are and as good as they're, running across the pitch, the intensity and all the qualities they bring. There's just something lost without Alexis McAllister in that midfield, isn't there?
Yeah, I just think he's quite clearly, for me, the most important of the three, really. And you really, really notice when he's not on the pitch. Yeah. I mean, I think that maybe is that because he's kind of the all-rounder out of the three of them. He can do bits on both sides of the ball. And so because he's so important for knitting it in that way, that's why you really miss him. I'm not sure, but he's just brilliant. I mean, he wins his duels. He progresses the ball brilliantly. He can give you something in the final third in terms of threat as well. He's just a really, really intelligent footballer. And he, for me, yeah, I agree. I think he made the biggest impact of any of the subs, really, and got Liverpool playing in that second half. And as soon as they did that, Southampton just absolutely couldn't cope with them. So he's an absolutely massive player. And it's interesting, actually, in that clip that Slot references mentality twice as well, isn't it? Yeah. He's talking about what Liverpool needed, in terms of mental strength there and to get themselves out of a sticky situation. And maybe he hadn't felt he'd seen that from the others who he brought off, and he wanted that mentality. I mean, I particularly think it's maybe interesting at left back, actually, what he's talking about mentality there as well. For me, there's absolutely no doubt that when Liverpool do sign a left back this summer, which is what we expect, it will be Kostas Tsimikas who has moved on rather than Andy Robertson. I think we've seen over the season he is the clear first choice there, and that there was maybe an opportunity for Tsimikas to grasp that, but he's absolutely not done that, and I think that's why he'll be on his way this summer, and it'll be Robertson and another player who Liverpool will sign.
Yeah, I think that does feel slightly inevitable. And I mean, we mentioned a few subs as well. Was there an element, as well as Matt coming on, Harvey Elliott also came on, and it's Jones and Szoboszlai making way. Now, I know people will naturally think that's good rest for PSG, but did it feel for you when he talked about mentality? It almost felt like the runners were coming off and the football IQ, the ones who can play the cute passes or make stuff happen, that was the big thing he was looking at as well.
Yeah, maybe he saw that little bit of cuteness was exactly what Liverpool needed. If Southampton were going to kind of try and defend man-to-man or kind of press you in that way, that maybe the best way to do it is the little passes around the corner rather than, in a game like that, do you necessarily need Szoboszlai covering ground? Even, he's the one he alluded to a little bit of fatigue maybe being the issue. But maybe it was just a case of we need more footballers on the pitch here to drag them out into spaces. And Szoboszlai is a little bit of a blunt instrument in comparison to Harvey, who will pick up pockets, won't he, and try and play those little short exchanges to drag players out of position. So, but if that was the decision, the reason why, then it absolutely worked. I thought Elliott was excellent when he came on. He gets quite a few shots away, just gave them something to think about constantly. Yeah. And I really, really hope as well that this has been kind of a big week for him in terms of his standing in the manager's mind. It's been such a tough season and so difficult for him to win over this manager. But he's shown, hasn't he, at PSG and in this game, how good he can be and how important he can be. I really hope Liverpool keep him around. I think he's a fantastic young player. He's only 21 and he's easily good enough to play for Liverpool. There's more to come from him as well. He loves Liverpool. He wants to stay. Surely if we get into next season, there's more opportunities to rotate there and we can see a little bit more of Harvey Elliott, because I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I really do hope he's maybe convinced the manager a little bit that he can be part of this team and he can play a big part.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Can still have a big impact before this season's done as well. And even a shout out to Endo, who just came on and basically kicked and tackled anything that moved for that short period as well. So they all have an impact that way. And media duties were interesting. We saw Trent on media duties for the first time for a while. So I do want to come back to that. But just in terms of sort of bringing it together, I think he just gave a few quotes here, which are worth just listening to about this weekend.
I go 16 clear, another massive week. It just keeps rolling on, doesn't it? But you've just got to dig deep now, haven't you? Recover well.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Of course, no, can't downplay too much how important today's win was. To go 16 clear at this stage of the season is huge. Puts a lot of pressure on Arsenal. Yeah, so we've done our work in the league now until after the internationals. Now we focus on the two other competitions.
Probably summed it up quite well, and who knows if he had an idea of what would have come yesterday at Old Trafford. But he's right there, Trent, isn't he? This is not one we're going to talk about as any type of classic, but we went 16 clear, we got the 3 points, there were no injuries that we know of, and it's focused on 2 cups, wasn't it, for the week?
Yeah, there's very little point, I think, dwelling on the negatives of that first half too much. Like I say, I think, I don't want to be too harsh on the players for the mentality aspect either, because it's just natural. They've got some huge games coming up, and you're playing bottom of the league at home. You are sometimes just going to naturally take your eye off the ball. They're not machines, the human beings, and these things can happen. And the fact is that they were too good for them in the second half, and they made it a comfortable win in the end. So happy days. And you still got some rests in there. Szoboszlai got 45 minutes off. McAllister did. Robertson did as well. So that will prove handy as well with the tests that are coming up. So yeah, it's not all bad. And the fact is, Liverpool got the 3 points. They come away from that now and ended the weekend 15 clear. They're 100% going to win the Premier League title. So yeah, it's as bad as that first half was. It's so easy to quickly move on from it, to be honest. And Liverpool got the job done, and let's bounce into the next 2 now, which are just absolutely huge.
Yeah, it does feel like that. We're starting the week on a massive positive. So yeah, so much to like from Saturday. Let's just file that first half away and move on quickly. And we talk, as we always do, about certain links to players that have come up off the field. There does seem to have been a few names come up from sort of clubs abroad. So the 2 that we're seeing a lot of this week, David, are Angelo Stiller, so the midfielder at Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, and the other one is Jesus Rodriguez at Betis. There's been quite a few links, especially from the Spanish side, to him. Heard anything on these 2 at all?
No, with Jesus Rodriguez as well, I've not heard anything, but he's 19 years old, and I think he scored 1 La Liga goal this season. That for me is not a market Liverpool will be anywhere near. That is clearly agent talk. I mean, if Liverpool do sign a forward, it'll be someone who's got way more production behind them than that. There's just no need for Liverpool to be signing someone of that level. So, I mean, they've got Federico Chiesa, full Italy international with hundreds of goals behind him or whatever. In a great track record, sat on the bench all season. They're not going to sign a kid like that. So I'd say absolutely no chance. And still is an interesting one, a little bit more in their kind of, that kind of player in terms of age profile, good level behind him, quite a few games that they will have watched. My only question, and I don't watch Stuttgart anywhere near enough, is that if he's a pure defensive midfielder and that's his only role, I shy away from the idea of Liverpool maybe signing a player like that, because I think they may be kind of more likely to sign a bit of an all-rounder in central midfield this summer. With, somebody who can do bits in the more advanced roles as well, because I just think Gravenberch is quite clearly the nailed-on defensive midfielder, isn't he? And unless Stiller wants to come and sit on the bench like Endo has, or he can do bits in that maybe more advanced role. Like I say, I don't know the player well enough at all. But if he is a pure defensive midfielder, again, is that exactly what Liverpool are looking for at the moment? I will be a little bit surprised.
I suppose the one bit I did want to ask you about Stiller, because we've talked about Liverpool maybe looking for a hybrid, an all-rounder, and someone that can come in and maybe accept they're not going to be starters straight away because of Grav, Max, Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones, maybe part of that rotational policy as well. Do you think, the suggestions that Stiller's got a rumoured release clause around the 30 million mark. Do you think something like that price point could bring him into interest? Because I know people like a Baleba type, and I get that completely, but that's going to cost major money, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is about it's not necessarily the money with Baleba, it's how you sell to him the possibility of coming. And okay, if you can say, oh, you easily sell it to him because he comes in as a starter. But if that happens, then are you sitting Alexis McAllister down? Are you sitting Szoboszlai down, Gravenberch, and telling them they no longer start 40 games in a season? That conversation then has to happen. And that is a big consideration that I think people kind of ignore. And the thing is with Stiller, it might be a lower price point, but again, to him, when he makes his next move from Stuttgart, does he want to go, yes, to a bigger club? So someone like Liverpool, but does he want to play 40 to 50 games in a season? And is that going to happen at Liverpool? Again, like I say, I'm absolutely no scout, so it's not a comment on his quality as a player. Although I know he's very, very highly rated, and obviously that price is excellent, really, if you're looking for bargains. But it's what can you sell it to him as a possibility to come here? Is he just going to end up in the Endo role of sitting on the bench all season? I'm not quite sure. That's an interesting discussion to have. So, yeah, that's what makes me think it's an all-rounder who if they do sign in central midfield this summer, because then you can get minutes in any of the three midfield roles that Liverpool have, and that is an easier rotation to make. Rather than someone who's just a pure defensive midfielder who will just sit behind Gravenberch on the bench, because that's very, very difficult to sell to someone.
Yeah, there is still a few question marks about that midfield position for various reasons. And the two more domestic links, actually different ends of the field. So this one came up last summer, and there's quite a few still suggesting that, first of all, Mark Gay, the Crystal Palace centre-half, England international as well, a year left on his deal. Think Liverpool will be interested in this player at all?
I'm not sure he's massively aerially dominant enough for Liverpool. And again, the role that Liverpool will be buying for in the summer is going to be the role of Joe Gomez, which again, I know you want a Joe Gomez who is more robust and gets fewer injuries, absolutely. But are you able to sign someone of Mark Gay's profile to come in and sit on your bench and do that? Because Canate seemingly can stay fit under this manager. So that's a big problem for you. You want to give Jarell Quansah some minutes as well. So I just really struggle to see it. I think if Gay moves, and he's been clearly looking for a move for the last couple of windows now, and that big move, that he'll want to go somewhere where he plays football. It doesn't make sense to come and sit on Liverpool's bench. And I don't think Liverpool will want to give him the wages he'll want to come and sit on their bench either. I really kind of struggle to see that, if I'm being honest. So I've never been big into these links. I know they've been knocking around for a while, but I really would be surprised, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's one of those, and he is a good player. There's no doubt about that. The only reason I'd feel that, almost in a bad way, he will be coming to Liverpool is if there were now question marks over Van Dijk renewing and Canate possibly moving on, which you wouldn't want to see anyway. So yeah, that maybe the two go hand in hand. And then bizarrely, the other end of the pitch completely, a player that's had recent links and they're coming round again, João Pedro, Brazilian player, Brighton forward, can also almost play like as a 9.5, as people describe him, the 10 and the centre forward. Heard anything around these ones at all?
No, João Pedro, I don't mind as a link, as in it kind of makes sense to me, and I've no doubt he's a player they're watching. I can say that on him. But again, is the production quite there at the level Liverpool would be maybe looking for this summer? He doesn't look like a guaranteed hit. I know, the goals and assists is not right up there, is it? I'm just not massively bought into that, but if that's the profile they want, and they maybe don't think Cunha is right because of the issues he's got at the moment, João Pedro certainly fits that bill. So it's not one I would like to rule out, I would say, on him, but equally, is he quite that top level yet? Albeit he is very young as well, so maybe he's on the cusp, and they can see that he's on the cusp of having a real breakout. But then obviously the big issue then is you've got to negotiate with Brighton, and he's got a little bit of his contract left. So that's a tricky one. But of course, like I say, that's not one I'd like to rule out, because I think it'd be risky and maybe silly to do that, because he ticks a lot of the boxes, and I know Liverpool have watched him.
Yeah, absolutely will be one to keep an eye on. And people maybe drew a few conclusions from this, and maybe it's wishful thinking. I know he's not in this clip, but You probably picked it up. Trent was on media duties as well, which hasn't really done much for natural reasons this season. Did seem to be smiling a lot at the game. Is this more just 2 and 2 getting 27? There's nothing in a contract. It's just Trent smiling because we're doing well and he's doing media duties for once.
Yeah, I'm not sure he did do media duties either outside of LFC TV. I haven't personally seen anything other than that. I don't. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might only have been LFC TV did, which is a pretty gentle underarm one. They're never going to ask him about his contract situation, are they? So I wouldn't read too much into that, unfortunately. I just think that's a case of they needed someone to do LFC TV, and he's a prime candidate for that, given he probably can't do any other media at the moment because the obvious question on his future would come up.
Yeah, and maybe while there's 2 huge games on the horizon, it's a quiet one just to tick that one off, shall we say. So that's fair enough. And then the final part of sort of, and it links a little bit to what we've been discussing with sort of transfers, incomings and outgoings. I know you clocked it at the press conference. It was a question asked, a really good one by Mo Stewart from the Anfield Wrap, and it referenced squad rotation, how Liverpool, I think it's only Nottingham Forest still come up in our press conferences about minimal rotation this season. Arne Slot specifically, though, talked about how he likes to use ideally 14 to 15 players rather than 20 to 25, which we kind of have got at the moment. Did you look at or listen to those comments and think, is this a message to the wider powers that be, FSG, or is this something players should be taking heed of?
I think it's interesting. I got a little bit of pushback on this, and maybe a lot of people will disagree. But I just get the impression he wants to keep a smaller squad. I don't see how anyone can kind of look at Federico Chiesa picking up less than fewer than 400 minutes this season and think that he's absolutely desperate to have a 6th choice forward going into next season, because the fact is the only competition Liverpool haven't gone really deep in, and they've got a couple of rounds in there, is the FA Cup. So, okay, so then the only season presumably you would need a Federico Chiesa is if you go deep in the League Cup, deep in the FA Cup, obviously compete for the Premier League and deep in the Champions League as well. So those are the conditions, and it's not very often you really see a quadruple push, is it? Maybe that's going to become more of a feature. Maybe you do need that Chiesa there, but I don't know how you sell to Chiesa, come back for next season and we're going to give you another 400 minutes, or Chiesa moves on and you buy someone else and say, come on, we're going to give you 400 minutes next season. That's just not. It's not a lot, is it? That's difficult to sell, and then even Harvey Elliott, 500 odd minutes, I think this season, he's really struggled. Same with Wataru Endo. How do you sell that to a player who comes in to replace him maybe, or how do you even say to Endo, we want to keep you around for next season? It's a very, very difficult sell and difficult to keep your squad happy. So I just wonder whether we will see a kind of a shrinking of the squad this summer, and maybe, like I say, it kind of chimes actually with what I was saying about multifunctional players coming in. Can you get one more midfielder who can play all those roles, who can kind of bolster things, but will get genuine minutes, rather than, say, using Endo for 300 and Harvey Elliott for 400 or whatever? Can you give 700 or 1,000 minutes to someone who can play in every single position? Is that a little bit more palatable? Is that how Slot wants to manage things? To me, his comments on wanting to use 14, 15 kind of chime with that. I really think there's potential for quite a few outgoings, but fewer incomings, but high quality, and ones that will, play multiple roles. Maybe that's an interesting one. But it also, you think of the links to Jarell Hatto, who can play centre half, can play left back. It just makes you think about that sort of thing. I'm not, like I say, it's very, very early, and we're a little while away from the summer yet. So I'm just theorising here rather than talking about what I think the reality is. But I think you look at his comments and what we know and how he's used his squad and how happy / unhappy some of the players that within the squad currently will be. It just all points to me to him maybe keeping a smaller squad. And to be fair, if you can keep your players fit in the way that he has this season, that is feasible and you can get away with it. You just hope Liverpool don't get bitten by that further down the line by having an unlucky season in terms of injuries. But we haven't seen the full kind of, the full Slot yet, have we? We haven't seen what his ideal squad would look like. We haven't seen what his ideal season would look like. He's kind of doing it on the fly at the moment, which makes it even more impressive. But I'm very interested. I thought those quotes were very insightful, really.
Yeah, it does feel like you said that rather than a big squad, the players that could come in, he sent a lot of the youngsters out on loan, or they've almost been dismissed, haven't they? Like Clark went, Bajcetic. It very much feels like I want senior stars that can come in and do the job straight away, which looks good on paper, no doubts about it at all. Is the risk for you, and we'll have to see how this translates, it's great to have that, and this isn't to be derogatory about them in any way, but all of a sudden with a few knocks, you could have Trey Ione on the bench, James McConnell being really relied on. Is that the risk possibly down the line?
Well, this is it. I mean, as much as luck, he said, we don't think we're lucky with the injuries this season in terms of we try and work in a certain way, and if we can avoid injuries on that basis, then that's happy days, really. I mean, his track record at Feyenoord shows it isn't luck. Equally, it's worth mentioning, did Arsenal just have pure luck for 2 seasons on the bounce when they got their first team out regularly, and now they've just had normal luck? Or, it's a balance between the two, isn't it? I think Arsenal have not moved away from what they did, which was things that I said repeatedly on this podcast over the last couple of seasons. They should be credited for being able to get their players on the pitch. That's not luck. Yeah. It's something they're doing in the way that they work, because it was 2 consecutive seasons that they did it. So, and now obviously they have had a bit of bad luck this season. So that can come for sides who are doing things the right way, clearly. Yeah. Liverpool could have that bad luck next season. So you've got to be guarded against that. But I wonder, it is a little bit of a concern, but equally, I think the manager buys himself so much time to kind of work things out and have maybe a slightly lesser second season, because he's going to win the league this year, which is mental, and nobody expected it. So, maybe there are things he has to work out as he goes, and maybe next season we get more injuries, and that is a lesson he has to learn. But he'll have bought himself time to do that. And I think the key for me, what's interesting actually, I think the best case study on this, I think, is central midfield. Because as I say, okay, if you go into next season, maybe Endo and Harvey Elliott leaves, if he were to leave, I'd love it to just be on loan. I want to keep him around. But say that were to happen, Elliott and Endo were to leave, and he bought one player to replace them. Now he swallows up all their minutes, so he's happy enough. That's enough game time for him, and he's a bit of an all-rounder. And then your next cab off the rank then is Trey Ione. So you've got 5 midfielders who are basically taking the huge chunk of minutes, and Trey Ione there as a backup, and he will be 1 year older, a little bit more developed, bit more ready to kind of take on. Is that, in Arne Slot's mind, the ideal situation? And I think on the evidence we've seen thus far, I would say yes. And similarly in attack, do you have one fewer, but Rio Ungomar is just a little step closer to that first team, and you replace Darwin Nunez with someone who takes up a load more minutes than Darwin Nunez even has this season, maybe Nunez and Chiesa's minutes. And then you have Rio as the kind of next cab off the rank in attack there. That, like I say, just hypothesizing at this point, because nothing really concrete has been decided in terms of what Liverpool's summer is going to look like. But for me, that seems to be what they're kind of warming themselves up for. And I'm not, going to say whether that will work or whether that, maybe that could be the perfect setup, because you've got 2 real talented youngsters there, very, very close, but also not too close that you're worried about it. And maybe that'd be the perfect plan. But I think it's fascinating because it's totally different to what we're used to. It's a big change, but we will see how that kind of pans out. Because as I say, it's very early days, but just on the basis of what we're hearing, what we're seeing, that seems to me maybe the way that Liverpool will go this summer.
Yeah, could be some big beneficiaries in the youth team or the youth talents there. And to be fair, as we said there, Red Armchair Support mentioned him, we won the league, so the ends justify the means. And if that's what how Arne Slot wants to work, how are we to say anything about it? We'll have to wait till the summer to see. And speaking of the summer, and right at the end of the summer, I know you will have clocked this one as well. This morning it comes out, Liverpool have confirmed a deal back with Adidas for the kit supplier, but not until the 1st of August, so right near the start of the season. How long, David, before the start sort of chance or the comments of where's the Adidas money start, John? How long we reckoning?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I think all the anti-FSG stuff is kind of being dampened down a little bit by the fact that Liverpool are winning the league at a canter, fortunately. So, maybe we won't hear that one yet. But, for me, this is good news. I think that, you know, the talk has been around this as well, of in some of the reporting of a 60 million a season kind of deal. But my understanding is it could end up being worth quite a bit more than that. So, you know, I think they're going on the conservative side of things. I think it's going to be very, very lucrative for Liverpool. I mean, they're always right up there for shirt sales as well. So I think you know, Liverpool have in recent seasons generally tried to work in a commission-based element, which wasn't typically done in previous years. So if they've done that again, which I think there may be a possibility of that around this deal, which is based on the amount of shirt sales, then, you know, there could be serious money on the table for this. And for me, I think it's good also because I've never really seen, even though they've done some great kits, I've never seen Liverpool as a Nike club anyway. I think they are very much an Adidas club in my mind. So it always suits them a little bit better. So looking forward to seeing what these kits look like. But also the most important thing for Liverpool is that it has a big impact on the bottom line, which you know, strengthens your ability to sign players and pay out big contracts to, say, you know, couple of players who are maybe your most important players who are coming to the end of them.
Yeah, no two ways about it. Will be a little boost all round. And yeah, as you alluded to, the net spend boys will be quiet tonight. And I know someone will give me a stick for that comment, but I don't really care. So there we go. That's fine. And the final part, I mean, it all comes thick and fast because I'm guessing pretty much after this, you're shooting off to Anfield because the 1:15 open training. There's even, I think it's 5:30 a slot on a player, isn't it? So it's going to be a busy day all round for this.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's quite good that we get to see the open training actually ahead of the Champions League. It's a little bit different and something that we don't get a taste of usually. So, and actually Slot is not that good at kind of covering up what they were going to do. I mean, I remember a couple of the group games, they actually trained in the shape and with the team that they were going to line up. So always worth keeping an eye on it for that. So we'll see if he give anything away ahead of this one, but I'm not sure he will really. Maybe he's got a little bit wise to that one and they'll just do warm-ups. But yeah, always interesting to get down there and see these, and of course to hear what Arne Slot has to say ahead of the match as well.
Yeah, quite a lot to think about. And with the game and thinking about injuries and players back, this was a fact on Saturday. I did see Cody Gakpo at the hot walk. The only details I'm omitting there, he was driving past in his car. He wasn't in the lineup quite early doors. Any news or any hope that he could be back and we're going to see him in open training?
Yeah, I'm massively hopeful. I mean, the fact they took him to Paris, to me, I was amazed he wasn't back for Southampton on the back of that. But of course, if he misses Southampton off the back of that, you would think, you know, it's just a case of, and the way it was put to me with this injury is, you know, the moment it stops being painful, he will be straight back in the squad. So it's just a case of, if he wakes up this morning, it doesn't feel too bad, he'll be fine. And I think he's been doing some individual training this week. So hopefully we see him part of full training today. And that, of course, would be a boost because he's missed a few games now in this recent run, and he's massively important. And I think for PSG's man-to-man style as well, someone with his stature and physicality would be really, really helpful to have him back, even if it's just for 30 minutes at the end.
Yeah, would make a huge difference. And a few people were asking, so it's right for me to do the same. No expectation for Conor Bradley? Is that after the international break not going to make PSG?
Yeah, no, I'll be absolutely amazed if Conor's involved. That was stated as kind of a few weeks, so it would be a huge shock if he was there today.
Yeah, so hopefully Gakpo will be a big boost and no further injuries, touch wood. And I suppose you mentioned it earlier, we're looking back to the weekend. A lot of the midfielders only played 45 minutes, didn't they? And even Gravenberch, the only other senior one, he comes off near the end for Endo. With the rotations, with the subs that took place, do you think, are you looking at 4 midfielders for this one, or do you think it will be more the traditional 3 forwards in the line?
I think it's really, really tough to say, to be honest. I mean, he will know that it depends, doesn't it, on kind of what does he think was the most influential factor in Liverpool's performance over there? Was it the fact it's away from home, PSG just played really well? Or does he think that tactically he could have changed things at the start and that would have been the better thing? I'm really, really interested to see how he goes about that. But I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest decision is what he does up front. I just thought it just didn't look at any point like a game for Jota in the first leg. Now, are Liverpool going to have more of the ball? Are they going to have more of the ball on the deck? And is it going to be a case of if you're pushing PSG back, you've got possession, you need someone who's going to put the chance away 9 times out of 10, then you do start Jota. If you think it's going to be a case that they will turn up and play well and press you really hard again, and you're going to need an out ball, and it's going to be try and exploit their man-to-man, then it has to be Darwin Nunez. But that competition is tighter than ever, really. And, you think of some of the lows that Nunez has had in this season. For me, it's, I'm almost kind of tempted to say that he should be starting this game. So that's a really tough one. And, again, we don't have as much kind of evidence on Arne Slot as we do on Jurgen Klopp. And so I find it really, really hard at the moment to kind of predict what he's going to do. So I am absolutely fascinated by what his selection looks like for this one. And, he has to get it right, because it's, Liverpool are in a good position in that they're 1-0 up, but you don't want to give PSG any encouragement or impetus. And if Liverpool start the game well and can get themselves 1-0 up, then they've almost decided the tie already. So, he's got to get this one right, hasn't he?
It is interesting. It's like, even from the PSG side, Luis Enrique was saying in his press conference that he'd rested a few for Lille, I think it was, they played, because someone talked about a bit of anxiety, or he'd felt a sense of nerves, which he said, I wasn't happy with at all. We should be confident going into this one. Do you think for this, there'll be an element of, will PSG just go for what they went in the first leg? Or is it more a case of the Parc des Princes plays a part in that, and just under Anfield, under the lights, it's a different game altogether?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I've seen a lot of the talk from the kind of French side of things over the last few days. I just think staggering, really. It's so close to that. Remember the famous Marca headline when Real Madrid came to Anfield a few years ago. Some stuff that's getting close to that, really, in terms of just the arrogance about it, really. And I just think, it's all well and good saying all these things and being confident and saying that you don't fear Anfield and that you think you're going to batter Liverpool after getting losing the first leg. But when the reality hits them, and that raw, and Liverpool are just working with the crowd together and it's flying all over them, I think they're in for a really nasty surprise. And to be fair, if PSG come and they play like they did in the first leg, then wow, they for me should be favourites to the trophy if they can go on and get a win in that manner, because that isn't a huge task. But I think that the Anfield crowd's going to be the big leveler, and more than that, I think Liverpool are just going to play better as well. And then you add those two things in together, I think we'll see a worse version of PSG, and I think it's just going to be a totally different game, or I'm certainly hopeful of that fact. So I bookmarked a few bits and bobs from the PSG side, just out of just for posterity, basically, because I my view, I may be wrong about this, often wrong, but I think it's going to be a totally different game, and I think we're going to see a better version of Liverpool, and I think they've got every chance of, as much as PSG battered them in the first leg, I think Liverpool can do that to them.
Yeah, as much as there is young talent and there's rapid pace in this PSG side, it does lack a little bit of experience when you look at it for a lot of them in these later stages. And Anfield can humble anyone. So we will see what happens tomorrow night. So there we go, people. I never thought we'd be saying this on the 10th of March, but pretty much with the league wrapped up, it's just cup focus this time, isn't it? It's a European game and the first trophy of the season coming Sunday. So there's so much to look forward to. All it leaves me to say as ever is, David, for the time, the insight and the analysis, it is much appreciated.
Thank you.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.